I have to be honest with you, I am completely geeking out over today's topic. I love showing people the historical sites in Boston. I love showing people the things that go back decades or even centuries here. Today is an exception. Today I'm showing you something that's only been in existence in the city for 15 or 20 years. This is the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Greenway. This is the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Greenway, and where I'm standing 20 or 30 years ago, this would have been a highway overpass with 6 to 8 lanes of traffic driving over me, concrete supports on either side, and the land would have been either blocked off or not fit for any use by humans. Today, it's a linear park. I'm a little bit, maybe a quarter mile from the northern end of it, and it extends for about a mile behind me. It has lots of smaller parks contained within it, and I'm going to show you several of those today, mainly because I haven't visited most of them myself. So we'll go on an adventure. I'm standing here in the middle of one of the smaller parks. This is the parks that are attached to the north end of Boston. And in fact, the area where I'm standing in warm weather would be a fountain. So behind me is the north end of Boston, which is one of Boston's oldest neighborhoods. In fact, many of the original colonial settlements were in that part of town. As I pan you around, what I want you to think about is that everything on this side of me was much more difficult to get to from the other part of town. Everything behind me is only a couple of hundred feet away. And yet, when I was going to college in Boston in the early 1980s, the highway overpass constituted a complete visual obstruction of that part of town and this part of town. They were very close to each other. You could get through on surface roads that went under the expressway. But in effect, that whole section of town was cut off from the rest. And yet, this is how close everything really is to each other. The reason I love the Greenway is it's put the city back together. So as an example of what I'm talking about, behind me is Hanover Street, which in a lot of ways is the main drag through the North End. And the North End, after being a major site of colonial settlement, eventually became an Italian-American neighborhood in the late 19th century. So as college students, this was a great place to come and get a good meal, maybe a pizza that was better than your usual college student fare, maybe actual Italian food, good pasta. But in order to get here, you would have to come out of the subway stop on that side of the highway and then cross under here. And where I'm standing, we would have effectively been right under the edge of the expressway and even in its shadow. And we wouldn't have been able to see everything over on this side in the North End from just over there. In case it isn't obvious, Boston is a very walkable city. The scale is small. If you're in the downtown areas, a lot of the important sites or things that you might want to see are very close to each other. That's why we have something called the Freedom Trail. You could actually walk from one end of it to the other if you give yourself sufficient time. So it's a really nice way to get around. Obviously, you can see we have plenty of space for cars as well. So as I've mentioned before, the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Greenway is a linear park that contains several other parks within its boundaries. This here is the Armenian Heritage Park. And we're only steps from Quincy Market, the Faneuil Hall Marketplace. It's maybe a 5-minute walk to City Hall. The maze is roped off right now. I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm going to leave it alone. All of that traffic that used to run overhead on the central artery is still running through this part of the city. It's just below my feet now. When you hear people talk about the big dig in Boston, this is what we accomplished with all of that time and all of that money. We got a major eyesore out of the way, and we got our traffic running underground. I have close personal friends and family members who will tell you that the big dig was a huge boondoggle, that it was a complete waste of time and money, that it was a terrible distraction from the life of the city for 15 or 20 years. I happen to disagree. I have some really, really strong personal memories of driving on the central artery when it would have been over my head back in the 1980s. And boy, what I can tell you is that it was extremely crowded and all the cars were cheek by jowl with each other. It was very, very hard not to feel like you were about to crash into somebody else at any moment, no matter how careful you were. So the fact that we now have this kind of open space in the middle of the city because we got rid of that eyesore, which was really no longer doing its job as an expressway, big, big, big win. Big, big, big win. So here's one of the biggest fountains on the Greenway. If you're a parent with small children, you obviously know what their likes and dislikes are and how much you want to handle with them running around and screaming. But I have to say, I have seen kids here having the time of their lives. And right over there is the aquarium. So if you've taken them on a tour to see the seals or the fish or the jellyfish, and they still need something to do, you can bring them right here and let them run wild. Although technically they do say running is not recommended here. It is slippery when wet. Young family just walked past me. Dad was holding an infant. Mom was wrangling a toddler. The toddler was just pointing into the air going, "Seagull, seagull, seagull, seagull." you really can't get much more adorable than that. Many years ago, I had a friend who lived in the Ashmont area of the city, which is the southern terminus of one of the subway lines. I lived in one of the suburbs on the near north side of the city, only about 5 miles away from here. But in order to get from my friend's place to back to home, I would have to go on the central artery and drive through the heart of the city. And let me tell you, it was no picnic. Even on days now when the big dig tunnels below me are jam-packed and have a higher than a usual amount of traffic, the commute is still faster than it used to be. It's also psychologically a lot easier because even though it can get congested, the amount of room that you have between lanes is still greater than it used to be. So all in all, despite the cost overruns and the tremendous disruption that it caused the city for many, many years, I have to say that we got our money's worth overall. Just to give you an idea of how absolutely gigantic and overwhelming that expressway was when it was here, here's one of the steel pylons that supported it. They've left it in place here in the Dewey Square area of the park. And now we still have steel girders here, but they're open to the sky. Right now we've reached the point in the park where we're very close to South Station and we're in the financial district. There's South Station over my shoulder now, and one of the subway entrances to the Red Line. So here we are, almost at the end of our Greenway tour this morning, and we are on the outskirts of Chinatown in the section of park known as Chinatown Park. Boston is like any city on the US East Coast. We can be very grungy. We're having a mild winter so far this year, but if we had snow, you would see the snow melting and refreezing and picking up all kinds of soot from car exhaust. And yet, even on a gray day like today, this area can be really, really gorgeous.